Chapter 7, Shadows and Tall Trees. They've embarked, leaving Castle Rock to head back to the mountain to light a signal fire, as well as to see if the beast is actually still there. As they're walking, this very first page, Ralph gets, ultimately he gets into a daydream and kind of analyzing their situation. And at this particular point, he notices that his gray shirt and wondered whether he might undertake the adventure of washing it. He's realizing his hair is, just, they've been there a while and they're filthy, and, it's not very good. He wishes for a toothbrush. He wishes to cut his filthy hair. It's rough. His nails, are yuck. On 110, though, he has this moment where they finally get to the other side of the island, where he gets to look out. And we've already talked a little bit about the water in the last chapter, about the surging waves and the power and such. Here, they just watch the breakers, which are the white caps, just go. And they seem to be a mile long, and they're just slowly going across. Okay? And the description in here, where was it? It was like in the middle of 110. It talks about it that the bulging passage of the deep sea waves. They were miles wide, apparently not breakers or the banked ridge of shallow water, so they were actually waves. They traveled the length of the island with an air of disregarding it and being set on other business. And so all of these massive waves just kept going. And there was no sign of them even coming towards the island. It's almost like the island wasn't there, and these waves were on a mission. And so then all of this thought about the water and the sheer size of it and how small and insignificant they are really struck Ralph. At the very bottom, wave after wave, Ralph followed the rise and fall until something of the remoteness of the sea numbed his brain. Then gradually the almost infinite size of this water forced itself on his attention. This was the divider, the barrier. On the other side of the island, swathed at midday with mirage, defended by the shield of the quiet lagoon, one might dream of rescue. But here, faced by the brute obtuseness of the ocean, the miles of division, one was clamped down, one was helpless, one was condemned. Simon was speaking almost in his ear. Ralph found that he had rock painfully gripped in both hands, found his body arched, the muscles of his neck stiff, his mouth strained open. Look what Simon does. He whispers in. He sees that Ralph is upset and on edge, whether it's in Ralph's body language, okay? But he's down there looking, and he sees it's helpless. It's hopeless. There's nothing that's going to save us from this. Yes, the signal fire is the only thing, but look at this out here. We're so small, and look at all the water and the waves. But Simon's response to him, and this is, well, not response because there wasn't anything to respond to, but what he says is, you'll get back to where you came from. Simon nodded as he spoke. He was kneeling on one knee, looking down from a higher rock, which he held with both hands. His other leg stretched down to Ralph's level. Ralph was puzzled and searched Simon's face for a clue. It's so big. Simon nodded. All the same. You'll get back all right. I think so anyway. Some of the strain had gone from Ralph's body. He glanced at the sea, then smiled bitterly at Simon. Oh, got a ship in your pocket? Simon grinned and shook his head. Well, how do you know then? When Simon was still silent, Ralph said curtly, you're batty. Simon shook his head violently till the coarse black hair flew backwards and forwards across his face. No, I'm not. I just think you'll get back all right. For a moment, nothing more was said, and then they suddenly smiled at each other. And so they have this moment where Simon is reassuring him, and it kind of works because Ralph chuckles and he's in a better mood now. But Simon is there to help him feel better. And look at what he says. You'll get back. I know you'll get rescued. What pronoun does he not use? We. That's kind of strange, isn't it? Maybe he doesn't need to say, well, I'll be rescued. It's implied. If you're rescued, we're all going to get rescued. Maybe that's what he's thinking. But he's like trying to make him feel better. We jump on to 112. Look with me real quick. We spent a whole page on a daydream. Ralph enjoys the opportunity to not be in charge, because he says that Ralph leaned against a tree, and at once the daydreams came swarming up. Jack was in charge of the hunt, and there would be time to get to the mountain. So they're dawdling, taking their time. He's enjoying just kind of sitting back being a hunter, even though they're not physically hunting at the moment. He's not in charge, and he can relax. And so he starts to dream about home. And he goes into this big daydream that's not important to the relevance of the overall piece, but you see him away mentally for a bit. 113, a lot of action happens. The bushes crest around him, and there's a pig that comes charging down the pig run at him. You see, he saw that all the commotion, and Jack falls to the side, and this boar comes flying towards him. Instinctively, Ralph takes his spear, shoots it, hits the pig right in the nose, it squeals, shakes it loose after a while, and then runs off into this other alternate pig run that they eventually find that ran parallel. And so it took off. And so this came out of nowhere. And so he was thrust, all the excitement, adrenaline. He kept saying, if you look on 113, I hit him. The spear stuck in him. I hit him. And the spear stuck in a bit. Didn't you see me? Maurice, I saw you. Right bang on the snout. Ralph talked on. I hit him all right. The spear stuck in. I wounded him. He sunned himself in the new respect and felt, in their new respect, and felt that hunting was good after all. Do you see how he kind of got wrapped up in the whole excitement of hunting? He got to experience, to some degree, the excitement that the hunting party and Jack had that one time that they killed the pig, the day that the ship was out there and the fire went out. Okay? And he had some fun. Yeah, if you look a couple pages before that, Jack was in charge, and Ralph kind of was able to kind of just fall back a little bit, and he was able to daydream, and I'll let Jack lead for a little bit. He enjoyed that. It gave him time to have that daydream. It gave him, now it gave him the opportunity to be a hunter and participate with the rest of them. He got interested in the retelling of it, okay, and talking with some of the other, hey, did you see when I did it? Yeah, man, you really got him good. Just really have that bond that Ralph doesn't have with those individuals, because those are Jack's crew, okay? Jack has the bond with them from the choir, but now the hunting and the fire. Ralph is just the one who gives orders that Jack mumbles about, and you think he's not mumbling to other people about it? He definitely is, to his tribe and such. On 114, 115, they reenact the surrounding. Yeah, and then we circle it, and then we beat up on it. But they don't have a pig, and so they throw somebody in the middle, and they just kind of pound on a little bit. Not like we're going to really kill you, but just, kind of get into it. But if you've ever gotten, into it, a scrum or something before it, what might start out as fun and games could escalate a little bit. And you have these kids who have been out here for months and months at this point, and it doesn't take long for them to start inflicting some actual hurt on this individual. I think it wasn't Robert, okay? And so they beat up on him a little bit. Page 115, after it wraps up, they say, oh, that was a good game, Ralph, just a game. I got jolly badly hurt at rugby. Heard of that sport before, kind of violent. And so they're talking about how you can get hurt playing sometimes. Roger says, you want a pig? Like a real hunt? Or someone to pretend, said Jack. You could get someone to dress up as a pig, and then he could act, pretend to knock me over and all that. You want a real pig, said Robert, still caressing his rump, because he's the one that just got hurt a little bit ago. Because you've got to kill him. Use a little one, said Jack. And everyone laughed. Now, it could have been that, yeah, that's funny, Jack, yeah. Oh, I'm just kidding. Unless you guys don't mind that. Okay? Because we know what Jack truly feels about those little ones. No one should be able to talk in the meeting except for him and Ralph, because we're the only ones who say anything productive. They should just do and say what we tell them to. He doesn't consider them equals. Okay? He doesn't. And so for him to even mention that, you can almost imagine the nervous laughter going on that, yeah, right. But in his mind, you can probably think, we're not too far away from actually doing this. Good. The bottom of this page, the whole purpose of them leaving Castle Rock, it wasn't to go hunting pigs. It was they're walking over to the mountain because that's where the beast should be. So as they're going over there, Ralph looks up and he goes, we need to go. Hurry up, guys. We're going too slow. We need to go and put the fire up there because the fire's out. We've got to start the fire again. Jack says, you haven't got Piggy's specs, so you can't. Well, then we'll find out if the mountain's clear. So then we'll go up there, and if we can't start the fire, at least we'll find, is the beast there or not, and then we will go and do what we have to do. But the darkness is coming. The next page, 116 and 17, Ralph is able to have a daydream again as they're progressing over the rocks and such. It's not necessarily a daydream of thinking back to mommy and daddy, but he's able to fall back from responsibility a bit as these people are trying to traverse and climb over these rocks, and the forest is too dense, and they're just picking their way slowly around the perimeter of the island. Okay, so it's taken a long time to get where they need to go, and they're running out of time. You know, the sun. You know, they look up at one point and say it's early evening, after tea time at any rate, which is kind of interesting because they haven't had tea since they've been there, but yet they still associate the time with what happens back home. Okay? When you were very little, I'm sure you had snack time in the afternoon at some point. Okay? And you go, I'm hungry, it must be close to snack time, knowing that it's not dinner time yet because it's not late enough. Maybe mommy or daddy or grandma and grandpa aren't home yet, so it's not supper time, but I'm hungry. Well, what time is it? Oh, it's probably snack time. And so you're able to figure out what time of day it is based on certain thoughts and connections with what's going on. Excuse me. 117, Ralph, with it getting darker and darker, and they're on one side of the island, they're hours away from their beach, let alone the mountaintop. And who's back at the beach watching all the little ones? Piggy. Does he do a good job keeping track of people? The last time at the very beginning when Ralph, Jack, and Simon went exploring, he left Piggy in charge of everyone. Not like a leader, but hey, keep track of the little ones and get their names written down and all that. He couldn't do that because they ran all over the place. And all the hunters and stuff were still there at that time. Now it's just him and the little ones. So Ralph says, we got to go back or send somebody because we can't leave Piggy alone all night with those little ones. That'd be nuts. That's not fair. And we know what the little ones are like at night. Okay, so we need to go back. We mustn't, and then Jack mocks him, we mustn't let anything happen to Piggy, must we? Ralph tapped his teeth with the dirty point of Eric's spear. If we go across, he glanced around him. Someone's got to go across the island and tell Piggy we'll be back after dark. Bill spoke up, unbelieving. Through the forest? By himself? Now? Fear. If there wasn't any thought of a beast roaming around out there, or creepers, or a beast from sea, or beast from land, or beast from air, all of these things, we wouldn't have this fear. And so we hear a representative of the hunters, for the most part, by themselves, in the dark, alone, across this island? Really? Are you crazy? I mean, that's the undertext, the subtext to that. We can't spare more than one person. Simon pushed his way to Ralph's elbow. I'll go if you like. I don't mind, honestly. Before Ralph had time to reply, he smiled quickly, turned, and climbed into the forest. So Simon volunteers to be helpful. Because does Simon believe in a beast? He has nothing to fear. Does he like being alone? Remember his little place that he goes? Remember at night he's the one walking around that scared kids at one point? Not on purpose. Okay? So he's being helpful. I'll go talk to Piggy. I'll go take care of all of this. And everybody else is scared, but Simon will go. So again, we see him stepping up. When he says things, it's usually pretty important. When he does actions, they're pretty significant and relevant. So keep a tab on that as well. On 118, Jack, Ralph, and Roger. Okay, they're going to the mountain. Okay, it's dark. They start climbing up, and they're climbing around, and they start coughing. The wind picks up. Did you notice in these last couple of pages when it starts talking about wind? Just wind blowing. Because what should we associate wind with at this point? Dramatic irony. When we know something that they don't. When that wind's blowing, what's moving? What? Storms?
The ocean. Dead body.
The body. The beast. Remember? Whenever the wind blows, that parachute fills up and that ape-like thing sits up. When the wind dies, it goes down. So as they're climbing up, if you were to go back and look at these pages, they're climbing up the ashes of the side. And they start, the wind blows and they start coughing because it gets all the ashes up. Well, that's from when they torched the side of the mountain accidentally that first time. But the wind kicking that up. And these are little elements of foreshadowing, that dramatic irony, those lit terms that, you know, that you should know by now, but if not, start getting them in your mind and start being able to use them and identify them. These foreshadowing elements of wind, they're climbing up in darkness, and every once in a while they mention wind. What do you think is going to happen at the top? Okay, so we have these kids climbing up the side of the mountain. Excuse me. At the bottom of 120, it's very interesting. That paragraph towards the bottom. Their footsteps and the occasional breeze were stirring up small devils of dust. Now that they stopped again, Ralph had time while he coughed to remember how silly they were. If there was no beast, and almost certainly there was no beast in that case, well and good. So, fine. But, and this is the thing that scares them a little bit, they don't believe in it. But, if there's something there, what are we really going to do? But if there was something waiting on top of the mountain, what was the use of 3 of them? Handicapped by darkness and carrying only sticks. What if we go up there now, if it's there, what are we going to do? 3 against 1 with sticks? Oh, and in the darkness? That doesn't seem like a very good strategy for success, does it? Okay? And that's what he's thinking. That's why he mumbles, "We're being fools." Out of the darkness came the answer. Windy? Irritably, Ralph shook himself. This was all Jack's fault. Of course I am. But we're still being fools. So are you scared? Are you nervous? Okay. Well, if you don't want to go on, said the voice sarcastically, I'll go on by myself. Remember, this is the one who wouldn't go across to Castle Rock in the daylight. Right? Remember with that, when Jack wouldn't go across until Ralph was over, and then Jack goes, oh, well, I better come. But here in darkness, it's that first time he fails at killing the pig. He couldn't do it at the very beginning. But next time. And so after, it takes an embarrassment for this individual to step it up. Okay? Ralph heard the mockery and hated Jack. The sting of ashes in his eyes, tiredness, fear enraged him. Go on then. We'll wait here. Silence. Well, why don't you go? Are you afraid? It's almost like he called Jack's bluff. Like Jack expected him to jump up and go, man, I'll go with you. I'm not chicken. Ralph sits down and goes, go ahead. Oh, what? I'm sorry? Well, you're not going? What, are you afraid? And so he calls Jack out. And Jack turns around and goes up the hill. All right, so long. He takes off. Roger. There's a little description. We don't find out much about Roger throughout this book. Just little snippets. Remember, he was the one, kind of throwing rocks and, out at the, trying to hurt kids and scare kids and pushing rocks over. And just not the nice kid, a kind of a darkness about him. But he sat down next to him. Roger, uncommunicative by nature, said nothing. So they sat there in the darkness on the rocks, or on a tree stump, just waiting in the darkness while Jack's climbing up there. So they sat, the rocking and tapping, impervious Roger and Ralph, fuming, just sitting there, very emotional. Jack came down and found them and was shivering and croaking in a voice they could just recognize as, I saw a thing on top. They heard him blunder against the trunk, which rocked violently. He lay silent for a moment, then muttered, keep a good lookout, it may be following. A shower of ash pattered around them, and Jack said, I saw a thing bulge on the mountain. Okay, so Jack was very adamant all along that there is no beast. All of a sudden, with all of the nerves and fear, he goes up and he actually sees something. I mean, this is probably the worst thing that could happen to them for the whole, putting out fear aspect. Okay? So 122, they all go up. Okay? For the first time since he had first known Jack, Ralph could feel him hesitate. Because Ralph just said, we'll go, let's look. And Jack, now? So he's saying the stuff that Ralph was saying 2 pages ago and a page ago. So they start crawling up. Jack whispers at the very bottom of 122, "Let's creep forward on hands and knees. Maybe it's asleep." Roger and Ralph moved on, this time leaving Jack in the rear for all his brave words. So Jack is the scared one now. He's not creeping up with the rest of them. They came to the flat top where the rock was hard to hands and knees. A creature that bulged. Ralph put his hand in the cold, soft ashes of the fire and smothered a cry. His hand and shoulder were twitching from the unlooked-for contact, moving his hands around. Green lights of nausea appeared for a moment and ate into the darkness. Roger lay behind him, and Jack's mouth was at his ear. "Over there, where there used to be a gap in the rock? A sort of hump, see? Because there used to be gaps in the rock, but now there's something right in the middle, because that's where it got tangled up after the wind took it up the mountain." Ashes blew into Ralph's face from the dead fire. He could not see the gap or anything else because the green lights were opening again and growing. So he was kind of getting sick and nervous. Okay, if you've ever been on the verge of fainting, have you ever seen those lights and spots in your vision? Whether lack of oxygen or whatever, you just kind of, you see stars, okay, that type of thing. Maybe there was a little bit of all of that. Can you see anything? There. In front of them, only 3 or 4 yards away, was a rock-like hump where no rock should be. Ralph could hear a tiny chattering noise coming from somewhere, perhaps from his own mouth. Maybe his teeth chattering. He bound himself together with his will, fused his fear and loathing into a hatred, and stood up. So this thing is 12 feet away. Okay? You could almost do a standing long jump and get to it. From here to over there. And this kid, there's a beast there, a hump that wasn't there before. So something is there for sure. It's not our imagination. And Ralph stands up in clear sight. They're done crawling around. Can you imagine? The warrior, the man that he is. I mean, can you imagine how scared? Wouldn't you be scared? A beast? You don't know. All of a sudden, there it is. There it is. So he stands up. He took 2 leaden steps towards it. So he steps. Here's what I love, these last 2 paragraphs. Behind them, the silver of moon had drawn clear of the horizon. Before them, so they could see a little bit of light. Okay? It's not like bright out. A sliver of a moon. A full moon, you get a lot of light, right? But just a little bit of light. A little bit of sliver. Before them, something like a great ape was sitting asleep with its head between his knees. So he was able to see that something was in a hump with its head between his legs. Then the wind roared in the forest. As we read this, did something click in your mind at this particular point? He just mentioned that the head was in, he noticed, okay, well, it's asleep. So the wind blows, well, what's that thing going to do? And who is 2 steps closer to it now? Ralph is probably 8 feet away from it. For me to some of you. And this thing is going to sit up. What do you think the reaction is going to be? What would your reaction be? This thing ain't asleep no more. Right? Put yourself in the mindset of these kids. So then the wind roared in the forest. There was confusion in the darkness. And the creature lifted its head, holding toward him the ruin of a face. Ralph found himself taking giant strides among the ashes. Is Ralph on top of that mountain anymore? No. The moment that head comes up, the next sentence, Ralph is halfway down the mountain taking great strides. He took off in a dead sprint, running through darkness down the side of a mountain. He heard other creatures crying out and leaping and dared the impossible on the dark slope. Presently, the mountain was deserted, save for the 3 abandoned sticks and the thing that bowed. So the moment that thing came up, I'm out of here. And he took off. And it talks about these giant strides. And he hears confusion behind. Well, who's the confusion? Who's probably trying to keep up? The other 2. Jack, right? And Roger. So they're flying down the mountain. I love that last line. The only thing that's on the top of the mountain, 3 abandoned sticks. Remember they went up with their spears? Well, they dropped them and ran away. And then the thing that bulged. You can almost imagine the moment they took off, the wind died, and it probably just went back over. So these kids, there is a beast on the island. They've seen it. The people, the most skeptic individuals on the island, well, I guess Simon's not there, but the individuals who were saying there is no beast, you guys are being scaredy cats, even though they were a little scared too, Jack, Ralph, there's proof that they are not alone on the island. And so what could possibly happen now? Okay? What's going to happen? Is Jack going to, man up and go and kill it like he said he was? Well, if there is something, I'm going to get it. You think he's going to do that? I don't know. Let's see if he's the man of his word. But there's, from here on out, the pace really starts to pick up with regards to, the action. Because we are really close from seeing the tension of the 2 leaders just cracking. And what does that mean for the rest of the tribe? Okay? So as we continue to go through this, look for those elements of foreshadowing about tension building. Okay? Look for these elements, these symbolic moments, like we talked about the shell or Piggy's glasses. Okay? Even fire, symbolizing, their future, their life, their rescue. Without the fire, it's not going to happen unless it's by dumb luck.